Director Waisbord, thank you so much for taking some time to talk to us. We're really excited that you're taking on the reins of the directorship at SMPA, and it's going to be really exciting coming couple of years. So first
Yes.
off, yes, thank you. So I first wanted to start off by asking you, what are some of your goals for SMPA as you take on the reins of the directorship? And talking in terms of short-term goals as we enter a very unprecedented and unexpected semester as we transition to virtual instruction, but also your long-term goals for the school.
Thank you for your question. Well, there are like short-term goals that are central to what I'm planning to do. First of all, is managing the transition to virtual learning, as well as dealing with all kinds of ripple effects because of the pandemic and because of the decision that the campus will be closed this fall. But while I do that, my goal is to basically continue the mission of the school. There are many things that are important to us that should be central, should be our main focus in terms of quality education in journalism and political communication, promoting diversity in our school, and trying to support professional development for all our students. Those have been central issues for SMPA, and I'm committed to continue doing that for the next 2 years.
Thank you so much, Director. And as we continue talking about supporting students, especially in the School of Media and Public Affairs, how would you define student success? What does that look like? Is there a specific model of which you would operate under with SMPA? And what are some things you would like to implement that cultivates a student-first approach?
Thank you for your question. Great question. How do we promote student-centered learning at SMPA? And I think we have been very clear at the school about what defines student success. It's about equipping students with critical analytical skills, with critical practical skills, with professional skills to be successful in the world, and also developing a sense of the importance of being global citizens. This is what it means, and there are different ways we do that. We do that in the classroom, we do that in events, we do that in small activities. And basically what we need to do is to listen, to hear what students want from us, how we can support them in their professional development.
So going off of that same idea, I think that as we talk about success, a question that a lot of SMPA students have as we go into this next semester that's virtual instruction is how to achieve that student success as we enter into this new phase of education. Mm-hmm. So that being said, I wanted to ask you, what kind of changes are being made within SMPA in terms of curriculum, programming, how professors are preparing for this new virtual experience? That way students have the best opportunity and chance to succeed in their studies.
Well, to be prepared for this unusual fall semester, what we have done is each faculty member has rethought the way that we teach our pedagogy, because things that work in the classroom not necessarily work in virtual learning. And I know that during the summer, the faculty have put a lot of time into rethinking fundamentally the classes that I teach. Is it about the kind of assignments, the kind of readings, the kind of interaction they have with the students? Having said that, I think that one of the guiding principles is that the way that we interact with students is completely different in virtual learning. And many of us have basically insisted on this point. Not only that more engagement is necessary, but try to be creative, innovative in the way that we promote engagement on a regular basis between faculty and students. And I think that ultimately the success of this experience will depend on how successful we are in creating new ways of learning and new ways of interacting during the class experience as well as outside of the class experience.
Thank you for that. And I think it's very important to have these conversations in a contemporary context as we are transitioning into a virtual learning approach. Mm-hmm. And with that, what are some of the core tenets of communication that you think will still translate in a virtual experience?
Another great question. Basically, teaching is a form of communication. It should be a form of engaging in communication. And one of the things that we have realized that in virtual learning, we need to be sensitive to all key elements of successful, good communication, which is not just talking, but also listening, engaging, understanding what other people are saying. For me, these are all sort of critical actions that are central to the way I understand what communication is. That communication is not just transmitting information, but it's fundamentally an interactive process. And it is no coincidence that when we're talking about virtual learning, how often we emphasize the notion of interactivity, which in my mind goes to the very core of what defines communication. And I really hope that students and faculty understand this, that the only way this experience will be successful is if we truly communicate, if we really engage with each other and do not expect, and we don't take, let's say, a passive attitude in the way that not just how the classroom experience will take place, but other ways in which we can continue learning and promoting students' growth.
Thank you for that. Going off of becoming creative in ways that we're going to be teaching and learning next semester, part of the rite of passage of being a SMPA student is spending hours in those edit labs and spending time with the equipment that we check out on the 5th floor to go out and learn so many tangible, valuable skills in production, in camera work, in editing. That may be a bit of a challenge next semester, and you touched on this in your letter to the SMPA community once the virtual instruction was announced. How is the SMPA administration and professors, especially the production and editing professors, going to ensure that students who are enrolled in those required classes still are able to grasp those very tangible, invaluable skills and learn them at the same level or close to the same level as they would if they were sitting in the edit labs in SMPA?
Well, that's exactly the question that not only all of us have been asking, but particularly the production faculty have been debating over the summer. How do we teach critical production skills when some of the traditional ways in which we have done this are not available? And I think it was a very interesting exercise. How we teach and how we practice these skills? And of course, technology here is the biggest ally, because not only because that's the way that we're going to be teaching online, but also because we have to be thinking about how do we use technology, how do we use the different aspects of the platforms in order to do production work beyond the current situation, right? So how do we learn skills that are translatable, that are applicable, even this situation hopefully will end soon. And that's what all of us have been thinking seriously, I will say, but particularly the production faculty, given the unique challenges of teaching editing and other skills solely on the virtual world.
Thank you so much, Director. So again, loving the conversation we're having about further trying to facilitate the students during the virtual learning process. We cannot forget morale and what it means to be SMPA proud. So what does building and cultivating a space that's welcoming through virtual learning, what does that look like? How do we continue to keep students motivated, keep students engaged as we go through this process during the era of COVID-19?
I think your question is about how you cultivate and maintain a virtual community, a community that exists in the physical world, but given the current circumstances, it will exist mostly online during the fall semester. And it seems to me that we can do the classrooms, we can do many events, and we can do office hours and all kinds of things that are part of community life at SMPA. But the question is that we need to do more than that. We need to be extra attentive to the fact that we're still part of a wider community, SMPA and GW, even though we are not physically on campus. And to me, again, I don't want to sound repetitive, but it's a question of how we think about different ways of engagement that goes beyond the activities or the classes or the office hours. And that requires a lot of creativity and engagement. Sort of what I think about this is a disposition, a willingness from all of us, faculty, student, and staff, to remain involved, even though we are not in a face-to-face situation, at least for the next months. The question is the style, is the form, rather than what the principles are. The principles are the same, that I think, in my mind, are central to the mission of the school. The question is that we have to be more creative in the way that we go about that and maintain the sense of common belonging.
I love how we're talking about communication here, because we're a journalism school and we're journalism and political communication school. We focus on communication. So it seems like that this could be a moment where we could really prosper and
Right.
take the circumstances by the hand and really prosper under it and do great things. So I wanted to shift gears a little bit and talk a bit about current events. So the country right now as a whole is going through a moment of reflection, activism, and change as more individuals are becoming mobilized in the fight against racial injustice. In your welcome letter to the SMPA community, you discussed at length your immigrant roots and your journey to the US to pursue your doctorate degree. So to pursue your doctorate degree. So I wanted to ask you, how will you, as director, make it a priority to promote diversity within the halls of SMPA?
How do we promote diversity at SMPA? And I think that essentially what it takes is an attitude, is a disposition that reinforces reflexivity, introspection, thinking about what are our blind spots individually and collectively. What is it that we're missing? What are the issues that we need to pay attention to? How do we listen differently to all of us? How do we diversify not just who we are individually, but who we are collectively? Without that kind of introspection, awareness about our own biases, again, individually and collectively, it seems to me that it's very difficult to move forward in ways that we create a community that is not only more diverse and more inclusive, but actually that everybody in the SMPA community feels that is part of it. We can have a community that is diverse and inclusive, but not necessarily people feel that they belong to it. Right. And in my mind, it's a question of understanding, if that is the case, what are the factors, what are the reasons, and addressing those problems. That seems to me in some ways mirrors what I believe this society and other societies should do, particularly in the current circumstances. It's taking a hard look on who we are, what is it that we're missing, what is it that remains invisible, and how we make it visible. It is an opportunity for growth. And I always believe that growth can be uncomfortable, can be challenging, but we have no option. If we want to be better as a school, as a university, as a society, I think that we have to confront this as an opportunity for growth, for becoming better.
No, and that leads us into our next question as we discuss intersectionality. You, sir, are certainly an embodiment of that, being an immigrant from the Latin Americas, Argentina specifically, and going to school during an authoritarian regime. How can you speak to this experience in a way that can relate to students of color on campus, specifically our students within the School of Media and Public Affairs?
Excellent question. Thank you. Thank you very much. In my mind, what my experience growing up under a military dictatorship taught me is that basically never take for granted human rights, never take for granted any kinds of rights. We know from many historical examples that they take hard work, a long struggle to actually achieve any human right, and they can quickly be removed, be taken away. So my insight, or my main insight, is that basically always be alert. Always think about what are the fundamental rights that define a democratic society, that define what we consider to be central to our public life, and be mindful of that, and denounce and raise awareness about any instance in which those rights are taken away or are threatened by different factors. And in my mind, this is what is at stake, not only in the United States today, but in many parts around the world, in which what we have seen for the last half century, at least, or 60 years, many of those achievements are being threatened right now by forces of that see it basically as a reaction, as a backlash against many of the gains in terms of rights, whether in terms of racial, ethnic, sexual rights, gender rights that have been achieved for the past decades. And that is what I find deeply troubling. But at the same time, I find really hopeful that actually our faculty, our students are fully committed to these questions. How do we defend, how we reassert, how we reaffirm our commitment to human rights?
I want to switch gears a little bit. GW students pride themselves on going to school in the heart of Washington, D.C.
Mhm.
We're just blocks away from the White House, blocks away from the National Mall. And especially this year when we're on the brink of what some are calling one of the most consequential elections in American history, how will SMPA take advantage of this strategic location, especially during our new normal of COVID-19? Will there be opportunities for events online, discussions within the SMPA community and with our fellows? How will SMPA try to take advantage of being in DC, being located in DC at such an important moment in American history?
Right. The question that you ask is basically how we translate one of the key aspects of GW, especially SMPA, which is our physical location. How do we translate that resource into a very different context in which everybody is online? And it seems to me that the way that I think about it, it's not just a physical location when I think about SMPA or GW, but it's about communities, it's about networks, it's about the people that are part of our SMPA community. And those people are still available. Maybe we're not going to meet in a physical place, in a newsroom, in an office space, in the classroom. But those resources, the network that we are part of, that we permanently cultivate, are still there. And we have the commitment to actually continuing many of the activities that we are known for and that our students love. We're going to continue those activities during the fall semester. In some ways, we could do many more of those activities because the logistics are different than doing anything in a physical space, but we are mindful that we don't want to overdo it at the same time. However, the more sort of invisible networks that we have with the faculty, with students, with staff, with alumni, with the National Council, that is there and that is very active. And that is something for students to take advantage, to tap into. So that is what, in my mind, it goes beyond the fact whether or not there is a physical opportunity for us to meet. Those resources exist, and everybody knows that in a different situation, we need to adjust and continue sort of these activities and building our community in a different way.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Director. And in closing now, here's a really fun question to engage. Our maxim, our moniker, our mantra is raise high. So what are some parting words you could leave us that will encourage our student body as we go through the rest of these times?
To me, raise high means something that is unique about students in GW. It's not just the motto of the school or the university. And one of the things that I find striking and so motivating is how enterprising, how active, how motivated students are. And that's what it means. And that means whether we're having classes virtually or in the classroom. It's about trying to figure out what you're interested in. What are the opportunities that I need to achieve your dream, to achieve your goal? What are the resources that the school has to help you, to support you? And in my mind, the students who have benefited the most from our experience are the ones who basically ask those questions or a variety of those questions, which is what is it that I want to do? What is it that I want to explore? What interests me? What I'm curious about? And how is it that the school can help me achieve those goals? And that requires this active enterprising attitude that I find so admirable about our students. And even though I have been teaching, I've been working at GW for 13 years, I'm still sort of pleasantly surprised when you have students who basically demand, ask, help me, how you can help me figure out what is it that I want to do. And that doesn't change. That is always there.
Thank you,
Thank you
Director.
for that. And I just wanted to sneak in with one last question, very similar to Gianelli's question. He asked about raise high, GW's mantra, but in our little special community of SMPA, we have a mantra of our own, and there's no doubt about it, students in SMPA are SMPA proud. So I wanted to know, what does that little phrase SMPA proud mean to you?
In my mind, proud is about why is that I'm proud of being part of this community. What are the reasons why I want to belong to this community? Why do I feel integrated? And that is for us to define what it is. I have some clear ideas, and I think many students and many faculty already know what is it about. In my mind, it's about being part of a community of learning, a community of practice, in which we feel that we have students and faculty with similar interests. They are similarly motivated, people who are supported, people who are ready to listen to each other and support our intellectual, personal, professional growth. That's a reason to be proud of. It's not just about us individually, but us as part of this community. And in my mind, that has always been one of the key aspects of SMPA, and that's why I'm proud to be part of, because it's a community in which I have many things that we share in common, not just in terms about media and politics, but in terms of learning, in terms of what societies should look like, in terms of what are the ethical and moral principles that should guide our lives individually as well as collectively. And that to me are plenty of reasons to be proud of.
I
Thank
think
you.
that Gianelli and I can speak on behalf of the entire undergrad community at SMPA and grad community at SMPA that we're very excited to have you on as director, and we're really looking forward to the years ahead.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate your question. Pleasure having this conversation.